There are multiple reasons why an actor might not want to be credited with a performance they gave, and a surprising number of them are actually positive. Perhaps they're looking to maximize the impact of a surprise appearance in a movie, they could be looking for an incognito way to branch out into another genre, or just doing a job for a pal which doesn't need scrutiny. Whatever the reason, these horror movies found another way to add a shock, and that was the unexpected presence of a star. I'm Jess from What Culture, and here are 10 actors who didn't want to be credited for horror movie roles. Number 10. J.T. Walsh, Outbreak. Disaster maestro Wolfgang Petersen delivered one of his most underrated films in 1995's epidemic horror, Outbreak. As with much of his American work, it's a big-budget affair with a sprawling cast, boasting the likes of Oscar winners Dustin Hoffman, Morgan Freeman, and Kevin Spacey. The finest scene, though, takes place in the White House's Situation Room, and slows the action for a moment in favor of a blistering monologue by the late great character actor J.T. Walsh. He plays the president's chief of staff and has assembled a task force to discuss the outbreak of the virus. In a commanding 2-minute speech, Walsh preaches the virtues of firebombing a small California town that has become the hotbed for the virus. He's passionate but logical, whipping himself up to a crescendo as he barks orders at the assembled military and political contingent, ensuring he insulates his president from his difficult decision. Walsh didn't discuss the reason for declining a credit, but the decision helps to make his character feel more real among the major stars with whom he shares the screen. Walsh wasn't the biggest name in the business, but he was the best actor in most of his projects. Number 9. Jamie Lee Curtis, Escape from New York. Here's an uncredited voice turn that remains a minor movie mystery to this day. John Carpenter's 5th film is predominantly a sci-fi action flick, but retains some of the director's familiar horror tropes in its dystopian setting. The film created an instant icon in Kurt Russell's eye-patch-wearing anti-hero Snake Plissken, but Escape from New York also reunited John Carpenter with one of his earlier muses, Jamie Lee Curtis, the star of Halloween. Curtis plays a dual role in the film, first narrating the expository voiceover that opens the movie, later contributing her dulcet tones to the part of a computer. Only maybe she doesn't, as the part is officially credited to a Kathleen Blanchard, an actor of little known. So little indeed that she has no other credits beyond this and its sequel. While Carpenter has stated it's not Curtis providing the narration, the actor has been cagier of the years, giving this the feel of another layer of intrigue to an already cult classic movie. Number 8. Gene Hackman, Young Frankenstein. It's hard to imagine Gene Hackman pleading with Mel Brooks for the chance to play a blind stranger in his 1975 classic Young Frankenstein, but as the story goes, that's exactly what he did. It's an uncredited part, on release anyhow, that sees Hackman act underneath a ton of makeup, but he just about walks away with the film. Hackman was friends with Gene Wilder, with whom he appeared in Bonnie and Clyde, and used his connection to get an in with Brooks, wanting to add some levity to his already impressive but awfully serious career. His character spoofs a similar figure from the original novel, a blind man who befriends the monster, unaware of his terrifying physicality. Only Brooks, naturally, takes the notion to its logical comedic breaking point. Hackman tries to teach Peter Boyle's monster to smoke a cigar, instead burning his thumb. He spills soup on the baffled creature and gets overzealous when toasting, smashing his wine glass. Hackman plays this role totally straight, allowing the material to speak for itself, and it makes for a very memorable scene. While he didn't turn to comedy often, it's clear the chops were totally there. Number 7. Anonymous, The Look of Silence. This one's a bit more serious. In 2012, documentarian Joshua Oppenheimer released The Act of Killing, an astonishing, horrifying film about the banality of evil. It focused on Anwar Congo, an Indonesian gangster turned political assassin who helped orchestrate mass killings of communists in the mid-60s. The quasi-sequel, The Look of Silence, turns Oppenheimer's camera on a victim. Here, the focus is on a middle-aged man who lost his brother to the slaughter 50 years prior. Over the course of the astonishing film, the man processes his experience with loss by interviewing some of the surviving killers from The Purge, along with their collaborators and family members. Despite the passing of time, this remains clearly a dangerous undertaking, and as such, the man is anonymized throughout the piece. The man acts in secret, setting up fake eye exams so as to speak to his subjects, but the pain he deals with is horrifyingly real. Perhaps more chilling are the responses, particularly those from the killers, who terrifyingly seem to exhibit absolutely no remorse. Number 6. David Warner, Straw Dogs. The veteran film and TV actor found one of his highest profile roles as Henry Niles in Sam Peckinpah's 1971 rural horror thriller, and went without a credit, for reasons admirable, funny, and just a little bit mean. Warner plays Henry Niles, a young man with learning difficulties who is the figure of much scorn in his small town. He's just about the only person happy about the arrival of American American mathematician David, who moves to the town with his wife Amy, a local. It's a juicy role, arguably the third lead in the movie. So why isn't Warner credited? Well, the story goes that Warner's agent had initially intended on getting his client high billing on the picture, to which Warner replied he'd work without a credit, so eager was he to reunite with Sam Peckinpah. When the director caught wind of this, he thought it sounded like a good jape and out went Warner's name. This may well be apocryphal. It's reported elsewhere that his participation was simply in doubt due to an injury. But Warner's name remains omitted from one of his most notorious film efforts. Not that it hurt the recently departed actor's stellar career any. Number 5. Bradley Cooper, 10 Cloverfield Lane. Here's an example that validifies that old maxim, it's not what you know, it's who you know. The 2016 sci-fi horror opens with Mary Elizabeth Winstead's character Michelle making a hasty getaway from her home after an argument with her fiancé Ben. While we never see his face, he can be heard on an answering machine pleading for her to return. It's not much of a part, really anybody could have taken the role. But rather than just anyone, producer J.J. Abrams chose to dial up his old pal Bradley Cooper to inject an Easter egg of star power into proceedings. What's more, to hear director Dan Trachtenberg tell it, this was also never intended to be the case, but was actually a result of poor planning. Later in the day, he realized that they didn't have anyone down to play Ben. Abrams grabbed his address book and found Cooper's digits from their Alias days. To be fair, Cooper has proven to be a gifted voice actor over the years, most notably as Rocket Raccoon. And while his face is never seen, you couldn't argue that he phones this performance in the conventional sense anyway. Number 4. Henry Winkler, Scream. Before his revitalizing second career, Henry Winkler was, of course, Arthur Fonzie Fonzarelli, the motorcycle-riding, jukebox-thumping kid from Happy Days. That youthful association is set up brilliantly in Wes Craven's hyper-self-aware 1996 classic Scream, where Winkler plays the strict but hapless high school principal, Arthur Himbry. He's not around for long, he delivers a few tellings off to a few teens, then gets stabbed to death, but it's impactful to see the performer play off his most famous character with such an antithetical role. Indeed, so great was the residual star power of Fonzie that it was decided his name would stay out of the credits. Scream is packed with young actors looking to break through, and it was felt that Winkler's already established name might detract from them. Unsurprisingly, the man commonly regarded as one of the nicest in the business was happy to agree. Number 3. David Hyde Pierce, Hellboy. One of the most vital collaborators in director Guillermo del Toro's stable is Doug Jones, a performer whose face you likely wouldn't recognize, but whose moves you'll surely have seen. The contortionist does motion capture work aplenty for del Toro and others, with his green screen breakthrough coming in 2004's Hellboy. Jones plays Abe Sapien, the aquatic creature who plays alongside our red meathead. The character is captured brilliantly through the performer's lithe physicality, a graceful counterpart to Hellboy's heft. The studio, though, felt like Sapien needed a recognizable voice behind the gills, and hired Frasier star David Hyde Pierce for the job. The beloved actor brought his usual refined shtick to the table, and between the two of them, Sapien was one of the best parts of the film. Pierce, though, felt that rather than a team effort, it was actually Jones's body work that really defined the character, and so he declined credit for the work. The act of kindness evidently had the desired effect on his colleague, as Jones went on to voice Abe in the picture's sequel and animated spin-offs. Number 2. Gary Oldman, Hannibal. Aside from the titular terror himself, the Hannibal series has offered up some absolutely sublime bad guys. The Silence of the Lambs, in particular, boasted a petrifying performance from Ted Levine as Jane Gump. And Ridley Scott's 2001 film looked to push the envelope further with antagonist Mason Verger. The despicable character is a mutilated patient turned victim of Dr. Lecter, who was disfigured during a therapy session. The wealthy sadist returns looking for revenge on Hannibal, happy to implement extreme measures. This out-there character needed an impactful actor, and they don't get much more impactful than Gary Oldman. Oldman initially wanted a prominent credit in the picture. Normally, this would be feasible, but Hannibal is the story of the eponymous doctor and Clarice Starling. It's not really appropriate to add anybody else to the mix. This was enough to detach Oldman from the project altogether until he returned for another proposition: omit his name altogether. This, it transpired, was a great decision. The already chameleonic actor is hidden beneath layers of heavy makeup. Settling down to watch the movie with no idea who you're looking at makes Mason Verger all the more frightening. Number 1. Kevin Spacey, Seven. Promotion for David Fincher's disturbing psychological horror Seven made great use of its impressive cast. There was smoldering Brad Pitt as Detective Mills, a rising star coming to maturity. Opposite him, Morgan Freeman as Detective Lieutenant Somerset, adding gravitas. Finally, Gwyneth Paltrow, ready to break through as Tracy Mills. Missing from the lineup? Kevin Spacey as the film's antagonist. This was a calculated effort to keep the killer's identity from coming out before the movie hit cinemas, and it worked wonders. While Spacey wasn't yet a household name, he had status, and to put his name on a poster knowing he wasn't one of the heroes would be to give the game away. Instead, Spacey makes his appearance some way after the midpoint of the film to absolutely incredible effect. He's bloodied, crazed, totally intense, and from there, he takes over the movie. As John Doe, he's tasked with delivering a monologue of intent that pulls the film together. Admittedly, Spacey is named in the end credits of the film, but the concerted effort made to keep his involvement unknown until the movie is over was a calculated risk that paid off. Let me know down in that comment section if you know of any other actors who decided to remain uncredited for certain movie roles. As always, I've been Jess from What Culture. Thank you so much for hanging out with me. If you're liking, come say hi to me on my Twitter account where I'm at Jess McDonald, but make sure you stay tuned to us here for plenty more great lists.